There is a moment, you have felt it, where everything you built, the relationships, the certainty, the version of yourself you showed the world, cracks, not slowly, all at once. And in that silence, after the breaking, most people do one of two things. They collapse inward, searching desperately for comfort, for someone to tell them it will be okay, for a story that makes the pain make sense. Or they harden. They decide that the answer to being broken is to become unbreakable, cold, sealed, stone. Both of these responses are wrong, not morally wrong, strategically wrong. Because strength, the kind you are imagining when you say, I will never let this happen again, is not what you actually need. What you need is something far older, far more precise. What you need is Maʿat. When Western philosophy talks about mental resilience, it borrows from two traditions. The Stoics, who told you to suppress emotion and accept fate, and Machiavelli, who told you to be the force that bends fate rather than the thing bent by it. Both traditions say, become harder. But here is what neither tradition understood and what the feather core reveals. A hard object breaks under sufficient force, every time. The question is never, how hard can I become? The question is, how can I remain in motion, responsive, adaptive, precise, no matter what force is applied? This is not a metaphor, this is physics. A gyroscope, that spinning instrument used in aircraft navigation, does not stay upright because it is heavy or hard. It stays upright because it is spinning precisely. It maintains its orientation not through resistance, but through internal momentum. When you push a gyroscope, it does not push back. It precesses. It redirects the applied force into its own rotation. You cannot knock it over by brute force, not because it is strong, because it is operating with precision. The feather core is a gyroscope, and Maat is what keeps it spinning. Most people who encounter the word Maat are told it means truth or justice. That is not wrong, but it is incomplete. Maat is the oldest operating system ever described. In ancient Egypt, Maat was not a god in the normal sense. Maat was a principle. It was the principle that the cosmos ran on, the deep structural order that made the Nile flood on schedule, that made the stars return to their positions, that made cause and effect hold true across time. The Egyptians believed that without Maat, chaos, which they called Isfet, would consume everything. And they were right, not in a mythological sense, in a mathematical sense, because what they were describing in the language of their civilization was what modern physics calls equilibrium. A system in Maat is a system in dynamic equilibrium, not frozen, not static, dynamic, moving, responsive, alive, and yet stable. A river is Maat. It bends around every obstacle. It carves through stone over time. It cannot be stopped by force, only redirected. A stone dam is the opposite of Maat. It holds until it fails. And when it fails catastrophically. When life breaks you, the question is not, how do I build a stronger dam? The question is, how do I become the river? In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, one of the oldest spiritual texts on earth, there is a ceremony called the weighing of the heart. When a person died, their heart was placed on one side of a scale. On the other side of the scale was placed a single feather, the feather of Maat. If the heart was lighter than or equal in weight to the feather, the soul was considered pure, and would continue its journey. If the heart was heavier than the feather, heavy with falsehood, with unresolved attachment, with the weight of living dishonestly, the heart was devoured. Now, most people, when they hear this story, interpret it metaphorically and move on. I want you to hear it differently. I want you to hear it as a precision instrument. The feather is the measure. It is not asking, were you good or were you obedient? It is asking one question. Did you carry only what was true? Every piece of false identity, the version of yourself you built to impress other people, the attachments you held past their useful life, the narratives you told yourself to avoid facing what was real, adds weight to the heart. Every unnecessary weight slows the instrument. When life breaks you, it is not random. It is the scale announcing that something you were carrying was not true. The break is not punishment. The break is calibration. Let me say something that might disturb you. I hope it does. The collapse, whatever broke you, was not the problem. The collapse was the measurement. Every scientific instrument has what is called a breaking point, the threshold past which it gives false readings or stops functioning. But a well-designed system also has warning signals before that point. Stress fractures, instability, overloading. If you are honest with yourself, the break did not come from nowhere. There were signals. Signals you overrode because you were too committed to the structure you had built to hear what they were telling you. The relationship that needed to end months before it did. The career that was consuming who you actually were. The identity, the strong one, the provider, the always okay one, that was too heavy to carry and too precious to examine. When life finally broke that structure, it was not an attack. It was the scale. It was Maʿat. And this is where the feather core begins. Not in the rebuilding. In the honest reading of what the data says, you do not rebuild from emotion. You rebuild from precision. In our research, the Way of the Feather project, we have spent years studying what we call the stability balance theorem. It began as a mathematical investigation. We were studying a property of a complex function, the Riemann-Zeta function, asking, as you move toward the center point of its domain, does the signal get stronger or weaker? And what the mathematics kept revealing, layer by layer, was this. The closer you are to true balance, to the center line, the stronger the signal becomes. The further from balance, the weaker and more distorted the signal gets. This is not a metaphor borrowed from mathematics. This is mathematics that reveals what is metaphorically true about the human mind. When you operate from your center, from precision, from Maʿat, you are stronger, not because you have more emotional armor, because you are producing less noise. Think about what happens to a precision measuring instrument when it is knocked off its calibration point. It still measures, it still gives readings, but the readings are wrong. A mind operating far from its center, flooded with trauma response, with grief, with reactivity, with identity collapse, is still operating. It is still generating thoughts, still making decisions, still producing behavior, but the readings are wrong. The decisions come from distortion. The feather core is the process of returning to calibration, not becoming cold, not suppressing the measurement, correcting the instrument. There's a specific kind of pain that comes when life breaks you that most people never correctly identify. They call it grief. they call it loss, they call it trauma. And while those words are not wrong, they are not precise. What you are actually experiencing is the collapse of a false structure. Let me explain. Over the course of your life, you have built a model of the world, who you are, what you deserve, what is certain, what can be relied upon. Some of that model is accurate, built from genuine experience, genuine evidence, genuine truth. But some of it, often the most load-bearing parts, is false, built from what you were told to believe, built from what you needed to believe to survive a difficult chapter, built from identity, from attachment, from hope that was not grounded in evidence. When life breaks you, it is almost always one of those false structures that collapses. And the pain is not just the loss of the thing. The pain is the exposure of the false architecture underneath. The moment where you realize the certainty you had built your life on was not certainty at all. Here is where most people make the second mistake. They immediately start rebuilding. They need to believe something again. They need certainty again. So they build another structure, faster this time, with whatever materials are nearby. And they build it just as false as the first one, because they never stopped to do the honest measurement. They never let Maʿat weigh the heart. The feather core practice is stop building. Sit in the open space of accurate measurement. Let the false things fall away and do not immediately replace them. This is not inaction. This is the most demanding form of precision work there is. Now, I want to tell you about a mathematical fact. A system in true dynamic equilibrium is not merely stable. It is resistant to perturbation in a specific way. Any force applied to it does not knock it off center. The force is absorbed into the system's own motion. The technical term is homeostasis, the property of a system that returns to its equilibrium state after any perturbation. The human body has this property physiologically. Your temperature stays at 37 degrees Celsius, regardless of whether you are in a cold room or a hot one, because the body continuously adjusts, readjusts, redirects energy to maintain its equilibrium point. This is not hardness. This is precision. A mind built on Maʿat, on accurate measurement, on right weight, on carrying only what is true, develops the same property. Not because it is impervious to pain, but because it has a calibrated center to return to. When you are struck by loss, by betrayal, by collapse, the Maʿat mind does not harden against the blow. It absorbs the information. It weighs it honestly. It releases what is false, and it returns. This is what the ancient Egyptians were describing when they called Maʿat the operating principle of the cosmos. Not that the cosmos never experienced chaos, but that the cosmos always had a center to return to. And so do you. I want to address something directly. There is a popular genre of content, and you may have found this video from that genre, that tells you the answer to being broken is to become cold, emotionless, detached, ruthlessly self-contained. I understand the appeal. When you have been hurt by caring too much, by being open, by trusting, the idea of becoming unreachable feels like safety. But coldness is not precision. Coldness is a different kind of distortion. An instrument that refuses to register any input is not a precise instrument. It is a broken one. When Maʿat weighs the heart against the feather, it is not asking the heart to stop feeling. It is asking the heart to feel accurately, to register exactly what is true, no more, no less. Grief that lasts beyond what is honest is weight. But grief that is cut off before it has been honestly felt is also weight. The feather core is not about becoming impervious to feeling. It is about feeling with precision, registering accurately, responding proportionally. This is the difference between a Maat-built mind and a Machiavellian one. Machiavelli's cold prince is sealed off from accurate measurement. He has decided that other people are only instruments, and so his own instrument, his capacity to accurately read reality, degrades. The feather holds because it is light enough to feel everything and grounded enough to weigh it accurately. There is something that happens when a person operates from genuine Maat for long enough. It becomes visible, not in the way people think, not as confidence or swagger or the performative certainty of someone who has simply decided to stop questioning. It becomes visible as precision, the way you enter a room, the way you speak, exactly what needs to be said, no more. The way you respond to pressure, not with explosion, not with shutdown, but with accurate measurement and calibrated action. People cannot always name what they are sensing, but they sense it. There is a quality in the presence of someone who has done this work, who has let their false structures collapse, who has carried only what is true, who has rebuilt from the inside out with Maat as the operating principle, that other people find both attractive and unsettling. Attractive because it is rare, unsettling because it does not mirror them back to themselves. Most people in social interaction are performing a measurement exchange. Each person is checking whether the other confirms their version of reality. A Maat-built presence does not play that game. It does not need confirmation. It already knows what it measured. And this, not coldness, not aggression, not the performance of power, is what genuine presence actually looks like. Let me give you the actual practice, not the philosophy, the practice. The first practice is what I call the honest inventory. When life has broken you or is currently breaking you, sit with the wreckage and ask one question. What was I carrying that was not true? Not who is to blame, not how could this have been prevented? What was false in the structure that collapsed? Write it down. Be specific. The answer to this question is not comfortable. It will feel like self-betrayal. It is not. It is the weighing of the heart. The second practice is minimum viable structure. After the collapse, the instinct is to rebuild everything at once. Resist this. Build only what is verifiably true. One honest relationship. One verified commitment. One real daily practice. Build only on ground that has been tested. Everything else, wait. Let it prove itself before you load weight onto it. The third practice is the daily calibration. Every morning, before the noise begins, spend 5 minutes with a single question. What is actually true right now? Not what you hope is true, not what you fear is true, what the honest measurement says. This is the feather core practice. It is not dramatic. It is not a transformation that happens in one breakthrough moment. It is the daily discipline of carrying only what is true, of weighing the heart against the feather every day. The fourth practice is this: respond, do not react. A reaction is generated by an uncalibrated instrument. It is noise, not signal. Before you respond to anything that disturbs you, any provocation, any loss, any pressure, take the time to calibrate. Ask, what does the accurate measurement say? Then respond from that, not from the first feeling, not from the last pattern that felt like this, from current, honest measurement. This is where genuine power lives. I want to return to where we began. Life broke you, or something in you right now is cracking, and every message you have been given says, become harder. Shut the door, get cold, stop caring. Build higher walls. I am telling you something different. The feather in the scales of Maʿat is not hard, it is exact. It is not impenetrable, it is precise. And because it is precise, because it carries only what is true, it cannot be made heavier by what is false. The lies that are thrown at it pass through. The manipulations designed to load the scale with false weight do not register. The provocations engineered to trigger a reaction find nothing to grab. Not because you have become stone, because you have become signal, a clear signal in a world of noise. This is what the ancient principle of Maʿat was pointing at. This is what the mathematical architecture of the feather core is built on. You are not trying to become unbreakable. You are trying to become unmeasurably accurate. And an instrument of perfect accuracy, one that registers only truth, that carries only what is real, cannot be broken by anything false. It can only be made more precise. Every collapse, every loss, every crack in the structure. It is not an attack. It is the calibration process. The scale is telling you what to release. Release it and become the feather. The way of the feather is not a destination. It is a practice. Every day you pick up the measurement. You carry only what is true. You let the false fall. And in time, in the quiet accumulation of precise days, something becomes visible that no amount of hardness can produce. A center, unmoving not because it is rigid, unmoving because it is exact. If this resonated with you, stay. There is more to build. The feather core is deep, and we are just beginning to map it.